You got to do is watch the tape. I mean, we had him tackled about 50 times. I don't know how many missed tackles we had, but it was like unbelievable. I mean, it was crazy. So, I mean, they all know what they're dealing with. That's the good thing, is at least they've got that in their head. I mean, he's hard to get down. He's strong, and you have to do a great job of staying in front of him and trying to keep him in the pocket. And you got to get 11 guys to the ball, and when somebody gets to him, you got to find a way to wrap up and hold on, because he's strong and he can break tackles. And again, that was the difference in the game last year.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher with you on your Wednesday here on the game. That, of course, the voice of Dabo Sweeney. Talk about Lenore Sellers and the nightmare he was to tackle a season ago, and hopefully it can be that same kind of handful for Clemson's defense coming up on Saturday as well. And that, of everything, I think was the most exciting part about this matchup when we talked about it in the preseason and set our expectations for what it could be, because, look, we spent a lot of the offseason talking about the hype around Sellers. We mentioned the hype around Cade Klubnik, too. These were two guys that were expected to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation, expected to be first-round draft picks and all that kind of stuff. And we thought this could be the culmination of both of their seasons, like who can have their Heisman moment, who can really solidify themselves as the best quarterback available in the draft, and neither one of them has had the season necessarily that backs that up. Now, there's been moments for both of them, and we'll get into the specifics coming up here in a moment, where you say, okay, that's the same guy that we saw a year ago. It's just not been as consistent as it needs to be.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I mean, both of these quarterbacks, I got to say, both of them have been probably the most underwhelming of the season, in my opinion, just because of how high the bar was set for them, specifically Lenore, who I think is a far better quarterback than Cade Klubnik. Like, am I surprised Cade hasn't played that great this year? No. Like, I mean, there's been good games for him, but there's also been games where I'm just watching him against early in the year against LSU and Troy, and it's like, this guy's supposed to be a Heisman hopeful. Like, he's supposed to be a top NFL draft pick. No way. And look, he played pretty well last year in this game. You know, the thing about last year is both of these quarterbacks, they both, like, their touchdowns all just came on the run, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Like, I know Lenore is both on the ground, but Cade had a pair of rushing touchdowns in that game too. So
he did.
It's going to be interesting to see who can kind of use their legs in the right way this year. Now, we know Clemson is really going to try to minimize Lenore in the run game after having so many missed tackles last year. And I'm sure that's something Tom Allen, the new defensive coordinator for Clemson this year, is probably putting together. But you can't help but think it's probably the same plan for South Carolina, in that they got to be good defensively and not letting Cade run all over them.
But my biggest question for Sellers is, what version of him do we see, right? We've kind of seen two different versions of him this year, one that looks very competent and one that's very reminiscent of the one that played in 2024, and one that isn't sure, one that's overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys, holding on to the ball too long. And again, I don't know which one trots out there on Saturday, and we could see a mix of both as the game progresses. But like, Sellers playing at his best is a big key for South Carolina winning this game, as you would expect.
It's a huge key. It's a huge key. Like, everything in this game, I think, boils down to what these quarterbacks are going to do. Specifically for South Carolina, if Lenore can play like the quarterback we know he's capable of, he's coming off I think, honestly, his best performance of the year so far against Coastal, and I think he played well at times in that first half against A&M. You kind of get that type of quarterback in this game, where the offense is humming and you're moving up and down the field and you're putting a lot of points on the board, and that has to do with Sellers. I think you're going to be able to win this game. I just think you can't necessarily rely on what happened last year be an exact carbon copy this year. You're going to have to throw the ball in this game, and you're going to have to get that running back room going, which, with the way they performed last week with Matt Fuller and Jawarn Howell, I would hope you see more of those guys in the field this weekend.
How confident does Dabo feel as Cade Klubnik heads on the road for this rivalry game? Here's what he had to say yesterday.
Confident when we went down there a couple years ago with Cade, and I mean, we did what we needed to do to win the game. It wasn't a great game by either team. We just found a way to win it. But that was Whitesy. We had I think we made a bunch of kicks in that game. What were we like? How many did he make? At least three field goals in that game. So I mean, Cade's got a lot more experience now. He's been on the road a bunch, and he's played a lot of football. So you don't win these games if your best players don't play well. That just comes with it. This is a championship game. I mean, this is a championship game. That's the blessing about, a game like this is you get a chance to play for a championship every single year when you're a part of a rivalry game like this.
Now, Cade Klubnik is really good when it comes to true road starts in his time at Clemson. If I'm reading this correctly, I believe 7-1 in true road starts in his 2 full seasons now as the starter. So that certainly works in his favor. And as you mentioned, the year did not start off the way that anybody expected it for. Struggles against Clemson, didn't look the best when it came to Troy, the Syracuse game, and all that kind of stuff. Now his numbers look stronger in some of these games because they were kind of having play from behind, throw the ball around the yard a little bit. But one thing that really stands out to me when I dive into Cade Klubnik and the ups and downs that he's had this year is the protection that he's gotten up front. A lot of pressure's gotten to him this season. And when you look at the early part of the season, just the amount of pressure percentage on dropbacks by game, 42% against LSU, 40% against Syracuse, 42% against North Carolina. And now they won the North Carolina game, obviously. But as of late, it's gotten a whole lot better. 31 last week against Furman. That's Furman, whatever. 35 against Louisville a couple weeks ago in the game they won. 33% against Florida State. So it does seem like the protection up front has improved as the season's gone along, and that's helped out Cade Klubnik tremendously.
And the other thing is they've dealt with so many injuries this year. I mean, Klubnik, Bryant Wesco's out. He's been out for a few weeks now, out for the season.
And he won't play this weekend.
That's right, yeah. So they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, and I think that's going to hurt Clemson a little bit in this game. But, yeah, you're right. Like, the protection has gotten better over the year, and that's what you need if you're Clemson. It's the same thing for South Carolina. I mean, I think we haven't really talked about it much this week, Tyler, but give credit to South Carolina's offensive line. Like, despite a few penalties in the Coastal game, no sacks allowed throughout the 4 quarters, and there were only a few TFLs. So the offensive line was very sharp, and I think that's the type of performance that they needed going into this game. Again, you could say it's Coastal, and you could say, oh, South Carolina was expected to put up 579 yards of offense and score 50 points and not allow any sacks and then shut out on defense. But all those things they needed to happen are coming at the right time to get you set for this game, because now you feel like, okay, we've done it before. Now we can go out here and really do it again. And
looking at Klubnik here, because turnovers were a big problem for him early on in the season, had 5 interceptions thrown in the first 6 games of the year. And again, he was injured and did miss the SMU game. But in the last 4 games, he's not only not turned the ball over a single time, he's not had a single turnover-worthy throw in those last 4 games as well. So he does seem to be really kind of playing his best football as of right now, which that is a concern as you're going up against him. And yes, you're not going to have Bryant Wesco. You still have talented wide receivers in that room. You have a capable running back in Adam Randall that has gotten better as the season's gone along as well. So for as much of the year has been a disappointment for Clemson, this is an offense that is capable of hurting you.
The biggest key for Clemson in this game, I think it's not even just about Klubnik. It really does come down to Adam Randall and what type of game you're going to get from him. I think there's been moments where he's been pretty good. He's for over 600 yards this year. So I think for a guy that's been a wide receiver turned running back this year, I think he's done fairly well so far. Like, he'll probably eclipse 700 yards by the end of the season here. My thing is, if South Carolina is able to stop him in the run game and you're forcing Cade into a situation where he's got to throw the ball around 30, 40 times in this game, you're probably going to have a great chance defensively to get some stops and get some takeaways.
Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. Clemson struggles on 3rd downs and struggles getting into the red zone. Who does that sound like?
And it sounds just like the team we cover here every day.
They are 118th in the nation in 3rd down conversions at about 33.5%, and they're 91st in red zone attempts this year with 36 overall. So this could be a game where we see a lot of 3rd down struggles, and maybe whatever team gets in the red zone more is the one that ends up winning this game.
Maybe so. And if you're South Carolina, you got to find ways to not just settle for field goals. Like, if it's a tight defensive battle, sure, a field goal can help you out, but you're trying to get into the end zone more times than not. And I have a lot more confidence in this offense now compared to a few weeks ago when Shula was still the offensive coordinator. Like, Furries, I think they're going to have a really good game plan for this weekend and really going to use Lenore's to his strengths, but it won't just be about him. I think you're going to have other guys get involved for sure.
I asked the question a little bit earlier on in the hour, how many Clemson fans do you interact with on a daily basis? Because I do think that affects how you view the rivalry this upcoming weekend. We'll get to that and some more of your other thoughts on the Firehouse Subs text line coming up next as we wrap up the hour. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday on the game.
A lot, just knowing the history of the two schools competing, the rivalry, how deeply it runs, just being able to win that game in my, in the home state, just in a stadium that we play all of our games in our home stadium, it'll be amazing.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Our head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. as we get you set for South Carolina and Clemson coming up on Saturday. That was the voice of DQ Smith yesterday, talking about the value of getting a win at home against a team from the upstate. Obviously, it's been since 2013 since that happened, and in the past handful of years, the away team has gotten the better of the home team. We're hoping that trend comes to an end. And for somebody like DQ that is playing in his fourth edition of this rivalry, trying to win 3 out of 4 against Clemson would be a huge mark, especially considering where this rivalry had been over the course of the past decade prior to basically 2022.
Yeah, I mean, that rivalry means a lot to him. I remember last year, him and Nicky Manwari running down the hill at Clemson, and just, seeing just how crazy it was after that game of how South Carolina won at Clemson. Yeah, this rivalry runs deep. It means a lot, and I think Saturday is going to be no different. Now, I know there won't be any flag planting or anything, but I think it's going to be intense for whoever wins the game.
We didn't talk about that yesterday. I don't have a problem with flag planting. Like, if you don't want people to plant flags on your home turf, beat them. Don't let them do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one thing to plant a flag. It's another to do it right in the middle of the field. And, I mean, we know what happened with Ohio State last year, where you had to have pepper spray and police come out. So hopefully that will never have to happen again here.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Clemson won on Saturday and they planted their flag in midfield, I'm not going to come in here on Monday calling them, unprofessional or thugs or anything along those lines. Be like, hey, should have beat them and it wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. That's the right mentality to have.
So I asked the question a little bit earlier on the hour, how many Clemson fans do you deal with in your day-to-day life? Because I do think that affects the way you view this rivalry game. Let's get to some of these text messages now. Nameless Texter says, I work with about 8 of them. That is probably going to be in your best interest if Carolina wins, because they're probably not going to let you hear the end of it for the next calendar year. Though this past year, it's probably been a lot of fun, because even as tough as this season's been, that's something you can routinely bring up. Like, hey, we at least beat y'all last time. Another nameless texter says here, about half of my family is Taters, of course, referring to Clemson fans. So, yeah, this one's very, very important for me if they get the win this weekend.
I've never, so what does the term Taters mean when it comes to Clemson? Like, who came up with that? Like, I'd love to know. I've always heard it, but I've never known what that exactly means for calling Clemson fans that.
Dave explained it. Captain Dave explained it to me one time, and I'm not going to be able to recall the story off the top of my head well enough to give you the history lesson on it, but I get the gist of it. Tater sounds like tigers and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's another chance to take a dig at your rival, which that's what this is all about, right? When we talk about Clemson, we like to poke fun at them and look, we recognize how great of a program they've been, and Dabo Swinney and what he's done as a national championship coach. But part of a rivalry is making fun of your rival. And anytime you get the opportunity to do that, you're going to.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's kind of a similar situation for me, too, because I went to USC, but brother and sister both go to Clemson. And it's funny. My dad texted me a photo about 2 weeks ago now at our house. We had the Clemson flag up. For whatever reason at the house, and he texted me a photo of it being changed to a Carolina flag. So I'm like, okay. So
there you go.
He gets it. He gets it. So
now, do your siblings, do they get in on this rivalry as much?
No. So, and again, they didn't grow up Clemson fans, so it's like they just go to Clemson, and now they're Clemson fans as a result of that. But yeah, I mean, a little bit, but like it's not like anything like what these other fans here have to go through with being at work and their family and whatnot. So it's not, it's more so fun for us, not as deep as that.
Okay. That's fair enough. And look, I know this can be the kind of thing that divides families, especially like at least Thanksgiving comes before the game happens. Cause like in years past, the end of the regular season came the weekend before Thanksgiving. So you would have the game on Saturday, and then 5 days later you're eating with your family. And I imagine it was probably a little bit more tense then, because you at least had the game was fresh, right? So you either had bragging rights or you were suffering from the loss. Like, at least now it's more, I guess, of the trash talk of what you think is going to happen. Oh, we're going to beat y'all. We're going to beat y'all. This is going to happen. That's going to happen, as opposed to being fresh off the game and then having Thanksgiving.
I can only imagine being at a Thanksgiving table and being in that situation that those people are in, where it's like half Clemson, half South Carolina. Like, and I mean, how is it for you with, being from Georgia and whatnot? Like, has there ever been situations where you have like a lot of do you have Tech fans in your family?
My brother-in-law's dad is a Tech fan. That's the only one that I'm aware of. So it's never really been an issue within my family. And look, there's not as many. The Tech fandom is a lot smaller than you probably think it is. I think Clemson and South Carolina have pretty comparable like fan bases to each other in terms of like pure size. And obviously this is a smaller state too, so it's more condensed within each other. You got a lot of Clemson fans that, hey, listen to us and we appreciate you guys doing that live and work here in Columbia and are walking down the street outside of our studios constantly. You know what I mean? So I think it's more of an overlap than maybe some other states have.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this rivalry does get intense for sure. It's definitely always interesting to see on the message boards whenever something bad happens to Clemson. South Carolina fans are immediately posting about it. I always love reading those posts and whatnot. But yeah, this rivalry is definitely interesting. And like Shane said, when this rivalry is at its best, I don't think there's one that's better than it. It can get really, really good.
Well, and again, last year we saw the best example of what it can be, considering the stakes and all that kind of stuff. And you felt it in the week we were talking about it. You were up there covering the game at Memorial Stadium. I'm sure you could just feel it in the air of how important and how intense that day was last year.
Oh, it was so intense. I mean, it was. Clemson fans went from the highest of highs in that game when they were leading, and then once Lenore scored that touchdown with a minute to go, you just see the look of disappointment on their face, like just shocked and just shell shocked out there. So
well, and give credit because Cade Klubnik had them moving down the field and thinking, oh man, this might be a field goal, might go into overtime, and then Demetrius Knight having the game-sealing interception there to cement himself on Gamecock lore if he'd not already done so. So you have an emotional roller coaster for both sides last year in this game.
Yeah, and you're kind of hoping it's a lot of the same story this year, but maybe not as maybe get a stop earlier in that drive when Clemson's driving down the field.
So what is the value of this rivalry without the stakes being quite as high? We'll get into what Coach Beamer had to say about that yesterday, as well as take a look at the latest college football playoff top 25 rankings and how that sets the table for what should be a fun rivalry weekend. It is the Extra Point. It's our Ed and Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday on the game.
This just in, AAA Heating and Air continues to dominate the Midlands with the best HVAC replacement options around with guaranteed financing, 12 months, no payments or interest, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. AAA is setting the standard for new system installations. But did you know they also have great deals on repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're short on cash, AAA Heating and Air can still help you out. They offer up to 12-month payment plans with no credit check required on repairs. So all you need is a valid bank account. So don't delay. Call AAA Heating and Air today at 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA is 803-677-1500. Tell them that you heard about them from me, Jack Velcher, here on 107.5 The Game. Whether it is a replacement or a repair, AAA has unbeatable options for you.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game, getting you set for rivalry weekend in college football. We'll get into the latest top 25 polls that came out last night in just a moment, but we're talking a little bit about what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday, and he elaborated a little bit more on the value of high stakes in this rivalry and how they can create such a great game like a year ago and unfortunately make this game feel a little more underwhelming this season.
Yeah, just that when you're on the national stage like we were last year, it will raise the attraction and visibility of this game. I know there's some other games that have a lot of hype and are great rivalries and are like your traditional rivalries and all that, and they're all great. I love this weekend. I've told you guys this before. Like I love this is my favorite weekend of the year in college football. Just all the rivalries that are being played from. I don't know if there's a Thursday game or not, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, throughout the weekend. It's just what makes college football so special. But it was pretty special last year, Rick, that everybody in the country was talking about this game, and everybody was talking about this game after the game too, and that's what we want. It's this rivalry doesn't take a back seat to any rivalry in the country, and like I said, I've been a part of some of the best ones out there. This one's special and heated and competitive and special 365 days a year, and it's up to us, both programs, to continue to get back to where we were last season. So when this game is played each weekend, everybody in the country is talking about it because of how great the rivalry is, but also what is riding on the game from a postseason implication standpoint.
Again, Jack, I'm saving these sound bites, and we will definitely revisit them a year from now to see if Coach Beamer was correct on that, not only from the South Carolina standpoint, but for the for the Clemson standpoint of things as well. And yeah, look, it benefits us all when this rivalry is at the peak of college football and both programs are good and it's a fun game to talk about and the eyes of the college football world are on it. That run that Sellers had to win the game last year was one of the highlights of the entire weekend a season ago, especially when you consider the playoff implications and all that kind of stuff that we thought at the time were on the line in that game. And, again, I think we can all look at this game this weekend and try and enjoy it within the vacuum of what it is in a single game season type of thing. But again, I think we're all hoping that the stakes are raised a whole lot higher once again this time next year.
You hope so. I mean, this game is, I got to say, honestly, like, I've only been on this beat for a few years, and I've only watched a handful of Carolina Clemson games before college and whatnot. But, this game last year was, I think, the best of the rivalry game between South Carolina and Clemson. And when these two teams are ranked as high as they are, I mean, even go back to 10, 15 years ago when South Carolina and Clemson were always ranked in the top 10, top 15 in the early 2010s facing each other. The stakes were always high then. But when you now have the playoff expanded and you have a chance to go to the college football playoff, I mean, I honestly thought the winner of that game was probably playoff bound. So that's what you hope you can get back to every single year, because you're going to have a lot of eyeballs glued to the game like it was last year.
Well, neither South Carolina or Clemson is in the playoff mix or even ranked this time around. We did get another set of college football playoff top 25 rankings here. These are the second to last, because we'll get some next week. And then, of course, we'll have Selection Sunday coming up immediately following the conference championships next Saturday. And to no surprise, I mean, no real movement inside the top 10 with the exception of Ole Miss dropping down to 7 and Oregon going up to 6 after Oregon's win over number 15 Southern Cal over the weekend. For the most part, as expected, it stayed pretty status quo, that being the only change there. And really, I think we can go ahead and start locking some teams into the playoff at this point. What do you think?
I agree. I think you can right now lock in, I would say, the top 4 teams in the country. I think you can all lock in A&M, Indiana, Ohio State for sure. Mm-hmm. But I honestly do feel like Georgia you could probably lock in. I mean, who else do you think? Probably Ole Miss and Oregon too, right? Texas Tech, I feel like that's the case. But what if they lost the Big 12 championship?
For me, like if Texas Tech were to lose by a wide margin, like if BYU came in there and blew them out, maybe, because look, they value BYU as a one-loss team, that one loss being to Texas Tech as the number 11 team in the country. Now, I do think you do have to take into account the fact that Texas Tech beat them pretty soundly at home a couple of weeks ago. So that would at least just balance the series out. I don't see a way. Again, this is assuming Texas Tech handles their business this weekend against West Virginia. Even if they do, like if they lose to West Virginia, I'd still feel like they'd probably be in the top 10. And then we've seen the committee does not hold losing conference championship games against you. So if BYU wins, that's a way to get both teams in. But I feel about 80% sure Texas Tech is a lock at this point.
I agree. I think you're probably right. So I think the top 7 you can unequivocally say are going to be in the playoff. It's just everyone else after that, as long as they all win this weekend, like you will definitely get Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Alabama in. And then after that, you're kind of just figuring out, okay, who are the other teams going to be in this thing? The committee seems to be really high on Miami, as they were the number 11 seed in the playoff bracket last night. And I think as long as Miami wins against Pitt, they're probably going to the playoff, right?
Oh man, I'll get to that in actually, we'll go ahead and jump to that point real quick, because that was something that Hunter Yurchek, the athletic director at Arkansas, who is the college football playoff committee chair, was asked about last night when he talked to Reese Davis after the rankings came out. And here is the latest discussion around Miami.
Well, let me take your first question in comparison to Notre Dame and Miami. They were compared this week, but they're compared in the same pod with Alabama and a one-loss BYU. And the committee still feels that Notre Dame is a complete team, has been consistent throughout the season, and deserves to be ranked where they are at number 9, ahead of Alabama, a really good 2-loss team with some great wins, and then a 1-loss BYU team, and then Miami falls in accordingly. The committee has seen some really good, consistent play from Miami over the past 3 weeks. You talk about Carson Beck over the last 3 games, has completed over 80% of his passes, 800 yards in total passing, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. He looks like the Carson Beck in that 5-game winning streak they had to start the season. They lost 2 out of 3, but now it appears that they're back on track. They started in this poll at 18, and now they're up to 12. They're the biggest mover so far over the past 4 weeks. All right.
So, and it's important to remember, because I know last night when they put the bracket out, once again, Miami was penciled in as the ACC representative, even though they don't really have a clear path to the ACC championship game coming up next weekend. But they are ranked number 12, which they've been steadily climbing in the polls. But I do think, like last week, he said, okay, we break these teams up into tiers, right? And at the time, he said Notre Dame and Miami were on a different tier where the head-to-head wasn't going to come into play. Okay, sure. Now he's saying they're all being compared in that mix there with Notre Dame and BYU. And then he's like, well, considering all 4 of those teams, they're not better than the other 2. So we're going to put Notre Dame ahead of them still. Like the head-to-head is still not mattering here as much as it probably should.
The criteria is just so wishy-washy every single week. It's like one week something matters, the other week it doesn't matter. And we're talking about the head-to-head here with Miami and Notre Dame. I just can't see a way in which the head-to-head doesn't, like, it has to matter, right? Like, if you beat that team, I don't care what week it was week 1 for Miami to beat Notre Dame, you beat them, and it mattered. Like, I wonder, if Notre Dame had beat Miami, would we be saying the same thing about how the head-to-head doesn't matter? No, you would be saying it matters if you're the playoff committee. So I think Miami does have a case to be in the playoff, but in terms of getting to the ACC championship and being the automatic ACC representative, it's not as clear.
Well, and again, we deal in hypotheticals a lot, right? And we bring up the point like, well, if Team A played Team B again, I think Team A would win that game. Like if Alabama played Florida State this upcoming weekend, there is nobody in the world that's probably going to pick Florida State to pull that upset a second time in a row, right? But they don't play this weekend. They did play in week number 1. Florida State did beat Alabama, so that should be held against them. And I get it. Miami has worse losses than what Notre Dame has. And if these 2 teams didn't play each other, then I'd have no problem with Notre Dame being ahead of Miami, saying, okay, well, the value of your losses there is worse than what Notre Dame's are. But the head-to-head does have to matter. Now, this is interesting because you bring up the point. They played number 22 Pittsburgh this weekend. Now, Pittsburgh, they themselves is trying to get themselves into the ACC championship game and play themselves into the college football playoff. They do need a little bit of help in that regard to get to that point, but they had the win against Georgia Tech last week. They got them back in the rankings. and they have opportunity to continue to control their own destiny. So Miami beating a Pitt team, especially if they beat them by a couple scores, is another feather in the cap of the resume. Now, again, it's really easy to say, okay, if Oklahoma, Alabama, and BYU all lose, well, duh, yeah, Miami's going to get themselves in at that point in time. But if everything else stays status quo, if all those teams ahead of them win, I do wonder if winning against number 22 Pittsburgh would at least get them up to 11, to where they're right there on the bubble at that point in time.
And the thing is about it, and I hate when this happens, is it's not their fault necessarily if they beat Pitt and Pitt falls out of the rankings, right?
Right, because they'd be the one that's responsible for that.
Exactly. I hate when that goes against them, because it's like you beat a quality team and then it's like, oh, well, that win doesn't have the same significance because Pitt's out of the rankings now. So it's a little bit of it's a little, you got to kind of, you do want to win by as much as you can this weekend. I think that would certainly help, regardless of whether Pitt is ranked or not after this weekend. But yeah, I mean, you kind of have to hope that some other things happen around you. Like, just because you're in the playoff picture right now doesn't mean it's going to be like that here in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place. But one of the interesting moves inside the top 10, the only move inside the top 10, was the Ole Miss going from 6 until 7. And Reese Davis, as I think we all assumed, would ask the question of, does the Lane Kiffin drama have anything to do with that? And here's what Hunter Yurchek had to say, starting off with a really bad 6-7 joke.
6-7. But seriously, Rich, we didn't have any discussion about Ole Miss and their coach. That was all about Oregon and their performance against USC. Their strength of schedule continues to climb. They've been dominant on the offense and defensive side of the ball, really good in special teams. And the committee had been waiting for them to have a signature win to really put them where we thought they deserved to be.
Okay, very quickly, let's go. That is part of the criteria, though. If that were to occur, then that can be part of the consideration in evaluating Ole Miss, right?
It is in the protocol, but I'm not sure we will have a data point to use that as part of the protocol.
What do you mean by that? That you won't have a data, meaning that you don't know what's going to happen with the coaching situation, or you will not have seen the team play without the coach?
Correct.
So the point that Reese Davis is asking about there is something the committee's talked about for years, since they started doing this back in 2014, that they will take into account quarterback injuries, coaching changes, those kind of things, into how they view programs. Again, they viewed Florida State as worse off when they lost Jordan Travis 2 years ago, and they did have a couple of games worth of sample size to form their opinions on that. The point that he's making is, if Lane Kiffin decides to leave, well, there's not going to be a game played before the playoff to see Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin, right? Because he's going to coach Friday. He'll make his decision on Saturday. And if he says he's going to LSU, well, then there's still no game that Ole Miss has played without him. So you can't say, well, we know for a fact they're worse or better without Lane Kiffin.
See, here's the thing. I hate that logic, because I think it's so ridiculous, number one, to punish a team that would have to go on the road instead for a playoff game. Like, I think with Lane, I mean, what if he decides to coach the playoff run, right? I mean, that's always an option too, right? I mean, would you penalize Ole Miss for that? I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't like that whole logic of, let's move this team back because we don't know what they look like without their coach. That's a real bad way to look at it. If Ole Miss earn their way into hosting a home playoff game, then let them have it, right?
Yeah. So now that the top 25 is set for the last weekend of the regular season, what games have the biggest college football playoff implications? We'll discuss that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your on your Wednesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tom Ed and Jack Belcher with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Again, programming note, we will not be here tomorrow, as of course it is Thanksgiving. However, there is some Gamecock sports going on today and tomorrow. You got women's basketball out at the Players Era Championship in Las Vegas, getting things rolling this afternoon, taking on Duke. Tip-off at 4:30. Pre-game coverage starting right here on the game at 4 o'clock. And then tomorrow, depending on the results of today, they'll take on either Texas or UCLA at either 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Earlier tip out there in Las Vegas, also right here in the game. So Dawn, the team, Brad Mueller, all out there enjoying Thanksgiving in Las Vegas, which I'm sure that's probably in and of itself a wild experience.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is for sure.
Of course, we got a loaded weekend of football. We'll get into the NFL stuff coming up in our next segment when we give our buy or sell. But it's my favorite week of the entire college football year, and I love the fact that we've extended it out to make Friday a full day. Obviously, have the full day Saturday. Do have Navy and Memphis playing on Thanksgiving night as well if you want to get some college football action there as well. But the beauty of the 12-team college football playoff is we have so many games with playoff implications on the line for one or both sides. And we start off at the very top. I mean, we know, look, Ohio State could lose this weekend to Michigan. They could lose the Big Ten championship game to Indiana, and they'd still be in the playoff. Maybe not hosting at that point, but still be somewhere within the top 10, considering how dominant their season has been. But Michigan's 15, Jack. And Michigan, if they could keep the winning streak going against Ohio State, would make a darn good case for themselves to jump up into that. At this point, it'd have to be the top 10 because of the way the ACC and the group of five are going to fall. They could vault more than 5 spots if they beat Ohio State on Saturday.
Well, also, if they beat Ohio State, look at the conference standings. Indiana and Ohio State are both 8-0 undefeated.
They would go to the Big Ten championship game. That's right.
That's what I'm getting at, is that Oregon's 7-1 in the conference, and then you got Michigan at 7-1 in the conference. Now, if they beat Ohio State, both teams are 8-1 at the end of the regular season in conference play. Michigan has the head-to-head, so they'd be going to the conference championship to hypothetically take on Indiana, who plays Purdue this weekend, and they should win that game, no problem, against the Boilermakers. So you're looking at a clear path for Michigan to get in. Now, I will say this. I know we can't necessarily dock teams for losing in the playoff, or losing in the conference title games.
Yep.
We saw that happen, last year where Clemson beat SMU with 3 losses, and SMU still got in as a 2-loss team. If you're Michigan, though, I almost feel like you have to win this weekend and then win the conference title game to get in. I mean, don't you think that's probably their real path in?
Man, that is and look, all things considered, they also lost to Oklahoma, who's number 8 right now and very well could be in the playoff, or will be in the playoff this weekend if they're able to beat LSU. If one of your losses is to a team in the top 10, you beat the number 1 team in the country. To me, I don't think even if you lose the championship game to Indiana, if you're already in the top 10 at that point, I don't think you fall out for that.
The other thing we have to talk about here, though, is, I mean, besides a win over Ohio State at home, what are their other quality wins, right? They beat Washington. Okay, that's fine. They beat Nebraska in Lincoln. That's probably their best wins besides that. So if it's really going to come down to what they did against Ohio State, then sure. But I think we have to look at the overall resume, what they have on their schedule.
I do think, though, beating the number 1 team 11 weeks into the season, because, again, we learn more about teams every single week. And you would say the number 1 team in the country at week number, I guess technically it's week number 14 or whatever because of double buys, at week number 12 is more complete than the number 1 team in the country at week number 6. You beat the most complete version of number 1 in the last week of the regular season. I don't care what you did on the rest of your resume. If you're close, that to me gets you in.
I agree, but it's like they're going to have, if they would have 3 losses after conference championship weekend, I don't know. I really do wonder how that would shake out. It would be a tough scenario for the committee. I think, honestly, if they do beat Ohio State and then they lost the conference title game, let's say by like a touchdown or whatever to Indiana, then I think, you put Michigan in, maybe put them in as one of the last seeds that has to go on the road for the first round. I mean, if they got blown out by Indiana, I think you leave them out. I mean, I don't know. it's all hypothetical, but
Look, I have no dog in the fight when it comes to Michigan, Ohio State. It's a fun game to watch every single year. And once again, it's going to be a second screen option because we'll obviously be at the South Carolina Clemson game. I'm kind of rooting for the chaos, man. I want to see
Michigan
it
continue to beat this guy. I mean, it's just
and see how Ryan Day reacts to it.
Yes, exactly.
So again, Indiana plays Purdue. They should beat them. That's not really going to be that big of a story. Texas A&M is in. Right, feel pretty comfortable saying that. Even if they lost to Texas, they'd still be in, considering what their resume has been up to this point and the quality of wins they have. But if they lose this weekend, that creates an interesting scenario for the SEC championship. The SEC tweeted this out the other day of all the scenarios. There are 4 different teams right now still in the mix that could be playing in Atlanta coming up in a week and a half. For Alabama, it's pretty simple. You win the game and you're in. You've got the win over Georgia. You have the tiebreaker there. Your only other loss coming to Oklahoma, the only loss in conference play coming to Oklahoma. So you win the Iron Bowl, you're in, no questions asked. Same thing for Texas A&M. They win 12-0 undefeated season. Duh. Obviously they'd be in. No questions asked there. But if they lose, that's where things get interesting. Because if Alabama or A&M lose, Georgia plays in the conference championship because then the Alabama wouldn't have the tiebreaker over them anymore, and they did not play against Texas A&M, so they would vault in because of that. Pretty simple there. One of those teams loses, Georgia goes in and would theoretically play the other winner, assuming one of those teams does end up winning. Ole Miss still has a chance as well. If they win and Alabama and A&M lose, then they'd be playing Georgia in the SEC championship game, maybe with Lane Kiffin, maybe without him. I don't know. But they are still technically alive to play in the conference championship next weekend.
Yeah, I think as easy as Alabama's scenario is, I think they have the hardest game this weekend. I honestly do think so because A&M, if they lose, okay, they're still in the playoff, no doubt about it, at 11-1. Alabama, if they lose this weekend to Auburn, like their season is pretty much over. I mean, they'd be going – they'd probably be out of the playoff at that point because
they absolutely would.
Yeah, they'd have the loss. They'd be 9-3. Have the loss to Florida State. Have the loss to Auburn at the end of the year. And going to Auburn, I think, is just as tough as it gets. We've seen. I saw a stat today. The last 6 games at Jordan-Hare between Alabama and Auburn, both have won 3 games and both have put up 167 points each. So it doesn't matter what type of Auburn team you're facing. This one has been bad this year. But I really do think there is a good chance that Auburn could pull the upset off this weekend. And considering if they win this game, they're going to a bowl game.
Listen, and look, Deuce Knight is starting for them this upcoming weekend, and I get it. They played Mercer. Mercer did give them some trouble in the first half last weekend, but Deuce Knight looked pretty good. And you have a guy that doesn't have a lot of tape on him at this point in time. Who knows? It's a night game. It's at Jordan-Hare. I think it's going to be like freezing cold. By the way, Saturday's game is going to be pretty cold here as well. If this game was at Bryant-Denny, I wouldn't be worried as much. But, man, going on the road where Kalen DeBoer, it's been better this year, has historically struggled as a head coach. And he's never experienced the voodoo of Jordan-Hare Stadium for an Iron Bowl. And he's going to get his first taste of that this weekend. I picked Alabama to win in staff picks, but that was not a confident pick.
No, it's not. That's one that's like when I get down to making my picks today, I'm going to be really struggling to make that pick for that game. That's such a tricky one.
Yeah, and again, I'm team chaos, right? I like to see things divulge into insanity in the last week of the regular season, and that could certainly be a part of it. How about this game? Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Like, Tennessee doesn't have a chance to get in, but Vanderbilt has one more opportunity to impress the committee. They have no pathway to make it into the conference championship game, so this is going to be their final data point for impressing. They're number 14 right now. Tennessee is number 19. A win, and that win being on the road at Tennessee, I'm very intrigued. And again, a lot of things could happen ahead of them that will affect this as well. I'm interested to see how the committee would view them beating a top 20 Tennessee team and being 10-2, which we've talked about. We thought that was the line. If you're 10-2 in the SEC, you're getting in, no questions asked. Vanderbilt might test that.
Yeah, I think a win at Rocky Top would be huge for them. It'd probably be their best win of the season, I would say, in my opinion. But yeah, they got to win this game, finish 10-2, leave it in the committee's hands. I think you should get in at 10-2. I mean, what a great story Vanderbilt's been this year. But I think, and you have a Heisman-level quarterback, I think, right now, playing like it with Diego Pavia. I think you probably got to get them in somehow. I would put them in over teams like Miami and BYU and Utah. Like, I think Vanderbilt has done enough if they win this game to deserve a chance to go.
It's going to be a fun full weekend of football, and that starts off tomorrow with a full slate of NFL games going on all day long, as always, on Thanksgiving. We'll dive into some of those matchups coming up next, as well as give our NFL top 5, bottom 5 as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Howard Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Wednesday on the game as we get you set for a full weekend of football starting with the NFL Thanksgiving games tomorrow. We're going to get to our Who Sprung Elite brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection, and I will give you a quick spoiler for my bottom five. A team that has jumped back down into my bottom five is the Las Vegas Raiders for helping further push Shador Mania this week by losing in the way that they did to the Browns. Look, it's been a disastrous season. Again, we'll get more into it specifically coming up the NFL bottom five, but they're my Who Sprung a Leak is, again, all you had to do was beat the Browns, and they couldn't do that with the first-time starter in Shador Sanders. And, again, as if you've been paying attention to the major outlets, Shador Mania is running wild right now.
It is running wild. I'm glad to see he's actually doing pretty well because I think he gets pretty misunderstood and misrepresented out there with being Deion's kid and all that. But, yeah, it's good to see they had a good first start in the NFL. It wasn't the best start, but hey, they won the game, and the Browns looked a lot better on offense in terms of having that explosiveness that they haven't had all year.
And look, I have no problem with Shador Sanders, and this isn't a personal thing with him. It's the way that people cover him that drives me nuts. And again, no backup quarterback's been talked about as much as Shador has, and a big part of his success on Sunday was a screen pass that got taken 66 yards for a touchdown. So the numbers are a little bit misleading there. And again, the Raiders are the reason why that happened. And they've had a pretty disastrous season themselves.
They have. The Raiders have been, as we'll get into in the bottom five, pretty awful this year.
But first, before we do that, take a look at the NFL slate for tomorrow. And again, Thanksgiving's a classic NFL day. I know college football's had their time there. Egg Bowl used to be played on Thanksgiving, but the NFL is never going to relinquish that day. And we get a really, really good matchup to start things off tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock with the Packers going on the road to take on the Lions. Like, if I had to think of, like, what's the most Thanksgiving game there is, Packers at Lions would probably be it.
You know, I was talking about this with my brother yesterday. That game's always been at noon, hasn't it? Like,
usually the Lions play at noon.
Traditionally been at noon, but now it's a 1 o'clock game, which I'm not really a fan of because I'm having Thanksgiving at 2 tomorrow, and it's like it's still gonna be. It's not halftime, right? But you know, I won't miss the game going later on and all that. But yeah, man, I thought that was kind of strange.
This is, by the way, a fight for the top of the NFC North. These two teams, let's see, they've already played once. Yes, they already played. Week number one. That's right. The Packers won that game
at Lambeau.
At Lambeau. So this is a fight because the Packers are, I guess, a half game back because they have that tie. But this is their opportunity to take the outright lead in the division if they're able to beat Detroit tomorrow. They're tied with Detroit, but they're one game back of Chicago. That's right.
I was about to say, don't forget the Bears are still at top.
That's right. I was reading that wrong. They do have 2 games against the Bears in the next 3 weeks after this. So that division is shaping up to be the funnest one in the NFL this year.
Oh, for sure. That's going to be a really interesting battle. So, yeah, definitely a big game tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Chiefs and Cowboys. Obviously, Chiefs keeping themselves from being in real danger by losing that game to the Colts last weekend. Cowboys also coming in with the momentum of their comeback against the Eagles this past weekend.
Yeah, both these teams are still alive very much. I would say the Chiefs are probably more so alive right now at 6-5 than the Cowboys. It just seems like the Cowboys' path in the NFC is going to be a bit tougher. I mean, they're not out of it necessarily in the division now that they have beaten the Eagles to kind of stay alive. But in terms of the playoff picture, I like the Chiefs a lot better right now just because they've been playing. That was a big win for them to get because if they lost that game to the Colts, we're talking about the Chiefs probably being out of the picture.
And finally, the nightcap, and I'm sure NBC is thankful for this. Joe Burrow returns for the Bengals as they take on divisional rival Baltimore Ravens, who they themselves are still trying to stay alive in the playoff hunt. And this is a better matchup than it looked like it was going to be a couple weeks ago.
I gotta say, I think this is probably one of the better Thursday slates for the Thanksgiving in recent years because now you get Joe Burrow back, you get the Ravens are playing much better football. That's a really good AFC North divisional matchup, even though the Bengals haven't been good this year. But you get Joe Burrow back, you get Lamar going up against him. That's the best quarterback matchup I think you'll get of the day.
And then you also have Black Friday game, Bears and Eagles. We can talk about that a little bit more coming up on Friday probably. Taking a look at our NFL top 5, bottom 5 now. We'll kind of speed run through this. Rams, I think unequivocally are my number one. Dominant win against the Bucs. They've won 3 games in a row against good teams, 49ers, Seahawks, and now the Buccaneers. We've sang the praises of Matthew Stafford. It can't be anybody but the Rams right now.
I don't know
You
about
disagree?
that.
Okay.
I'm going with the Patriots.
Right.
By the order of operations, because the Colts lost, they're falling down, and the team that was my second team was the Patriots. So I'm moving the Pats up to number 1.
Pats are my number 2. They did have to kind of a sleepy start. They had the half bye because they played on Thursday the week before. Got off to a slow start. Got down 10-0. Were able to battle back and beat the Bengals. And they won 9 straight, so I give them a lot of credit for that. Again, we're talking about the Patriots being back at the top of the NFL. All kind of feels right in the world again. But yeah, they're not far behind the Rams. I'll say that.
Yeah, and the Rams are my number 2. They're playing really good football. You really can't go wrong either way if it is the Pats or the Rams. But give me the Rams at number 2 here. Won 6 in a row. Really looking good right now in the NFC West.
My number 3, Broncos. We're on a bye. Nothing to be said there. Still 8 straight wins in a row. Number 3.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Broncos are my number 3 as well.
Colts went from my number 1 down to number 4 now. They got dominated in the fourth quarter in overtime by the Chiefs. They've now lost 2 out of the last 3. That's like, okay, are we teetering here? And Jonathan Taylor's been held under 60 yards each time. So if they take the run away, the Colts are a different team.
We're pretty much on the same wavelength right now because I moved the Colts down to number 4 as well. Look, I'm not ready to jump ship on the Colts and Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor. This is still a really good football team, and I think we honestly forget how tough it is to go to Arrowhead and win games there. The Chiefs are very much still alive in the playoff picture, but the Colts are a very good team too, and I don't think if they lose again this weekend, I would say there's a little bit more to be concerned about, but for now, they're still alive in the top 5.
My number 5, we just talked about it a moment ago. I got the Bears, 8-3. Look, their wins have not been pretty. They've had to come back a lot. But winning is winning at the end of the day. Now, they do have a tough stretch coming up where 5 of their last 6 games are Philadelphia, Green Bay twice, San Francisco, and Detroit. So we're going to learn just how good they are in that stretch. But, hey, they're finding a way to win, and that's what matters.
I promise I did not look at your sheet because I have the Bears at number 5 as well. I know they have not had the prettiest wins, and you could say they probably should have lost to the Bengals a few weeks ago. You could probably say they should have lost to the Giants, yada, yada, yada. But they've won 4 in a row. They've been really, really good since starting 0-2. They only lost 1 game since then, and that was to the Ravens. So they've been playing some good ball.
NFL bottom 5 now. Run through these pretty quick because, again, we kind of know what these teams are at this point. Raiders are my number 28. Again, they lose to a pretty bad Browns team. Shador Sanders looked good, at least in his debut. So there's that, which is giving the national talking heads plenty of things to discuss. But, yeah, they're my number 28.
Yeah, for me, number 28, the New York Jets. Been playing a little bit better lately, but have also continued to lose. So Jets at 28.
Jets at 29 for me. They're at the point of the season where they're just rotating quarterbacks every week. 1 week it's Justin Fields, 1 week it's Tyrod Taylor. Like, you're kind of circling the drain at that point when you just can't decide who your quarterback's going to be week to week.
Yeah, number 29 for me, New Orleans Saints. They slid back a spot. Haven't been good this year, so there you go.
Yeah, Saints lost to the Falcons, who they themselves were my bottom 5 last week. No offensive touchdowns, missed 2 field goals. They had to release their kicker on Monday. Crowd was booing them. Like, it's not good in New Orleans.
Yeah, number 30 for me, the Vegas Raiders lost 5 in a row, lost the lowly Browns, so nothing more to be said there. The Raiders have been so bad this year.
And, of course, our bottom 2 going to stay the same. Giants at 31, Titans at 32. Are you surprised we haven't had more coaches fired at this point?
No, not yet, because, I mean, the Raiders aren't going to fire Pete Carroll, though they did fire Chip Kelly. So.
They did. Hey,
so there you go. Technically.
Shane, you making the phone call?
I mean, he did win the national championship at Ohio State. So
Chip Kelly's not coming here. I feel pretty confident saying that.
I feel the same way.
We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. Have some Thanksgiving thoughts, including when is Dan Hurley's team celebrating Thanksgiving, and why is that? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Extra Points Hour, Ed and Jack Beltry on your Wednesday here on The Game.
and just have a great Thanksgiving to everyone out there. We're going to celebrate our Thanksgiving on Wednesday as a team. We're going to eat what's in the turkey, Bobby? No. What makes people sleepy? Tryptophan. So we're not going to eat tryptophan on Thursday and be sluggish on Friday. So we're going to eat the tryptophan, the turkey and everything on Wednesday, so that all the tryptophan is out of our system by the time we get to MSG.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Howard and Jack Belcher wrapping up the hour here on your Thanksgiving Eve. Here on the game, the voice of UConn men's basketball head coach Dan Hurley, as his team prepares to play at Madison Square Garden on Black Friday, taking on Illinois in a huge top 15 matchup there early on in the season. And, well, he's strategic where he doesn't want his team to be sluggish in that game. So they're moving Thanksgiving up to today. So for everybody at UConn, happy Thanksgiving.
So I'm looking up what tryptophan. So it's it's an essential amino acid that the body uses to create serotonin and melatonin. So it's found in foods like turkey, chicken, eggs, milk. So basically any food you eat.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dan Hurley being very specific about it, and it's not the least bit surprising at all, considering if you've ever heard Dan Hurley talk, this is par for the course.
Well, and you sent me that clip. I did have to clean it up with a couple of words that were in there that were not allowed to broadcast on the radio in true Dan Hurley fashion. But yeah, and look, that should be an exciting matchup coming up on Friday. I think turkey has high amounts of tryptophan in it, which is because, like, I've already heard my entire life, hey, turkey makes you sleepy. That's why Thanksgiving has the legendary post-meal nap while you're watching the mid-afternoon game or whatever. So yeah, smart strategy to not load up on that the day before you play a big matchup like Illinois coming up on Friday.
No, I understand it from UConn's perspective. And honestly, if there's a lot of teams that are going to be playing on Friday, like South Carolina is going to be playing on Friday as well. So for men's basketball, that is. So I wonder what their strategy will be this weekend, but it's not the least bit surprising.
Well, that could be a great question for post-game. Be like, hey, coach, when did you guys eat your Thanksgiving meal? And if it's like if it's not a pretty win or something like that, you can say, did that have any reason why you guys maybe didn't play your best today?
Yeah. You guys have too much tryptophan?
Yeah. That's a very legitimate question to ask. Again, we'll talk to you coming up on Friday. You mentioned your plans going to Georgia for Thanksgiving tomorrow. Hanging out there at Lake Oconee should be fun.
Yeah. I'm actually out here right now, which is why I'm on stream to do radio today. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving. Always a very good, underrated holiday. I know you said it's your favorite holiday. I would say it's right up there. Yeah. I think it's a bit better than Christmas.
I love Thanksgiving. You just got to eat. You don't have to buy people presents, and you can watch football the entire time. That's the perfect holiday for me. Are you like turkey, ham, white meat, dark meat? Where do you fall on that?
So I love turkey. I also love ham, so I'm going to have both. Now, I'm more of a white meat guy. But I think isn't the leg more so dark meat, if I'm not mistaken?
That is
like
correct.
if I get a leg, I'm gonna eat it, right? But like typically I'll go with the white meat compared to the dark meat. I feel like a lot of people could probably say that the same as well.
Yeah, I'm more of a white meat person. I don't mind dark meat, and yeah, if you hand me a turkey leg, I'm gonna eat the thing. But yeah, I prefer the white meat covered in gravy and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to ask you this question, and this can have a bearing on our friendship, considering the fact that you are not from the South. Is it stuffing or dressing?
That is going to rile a lot of people up, I'm sure. Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 25. I can handle it. Stuffing. It's stuffing. Like, dressing is liquidy. Stuffing is not. Stuffing is stuffing. It's not dressing. So
that is a common pushback I hear on that, which is why, and I will die on this hill, to me, there's no G on it. When you're talking about cornbread dressing at Thanksgiving, I don't use the G. So that to me, there's a distinction between the liquid you put on a salad and what you eat at Thanksgiving, to me.
That's fair. So I guess I'll say stuffing then instead of stuffing.
Go to dessert. Do you have a favorite for Thanksgiving?
I love any sort of pie. I've come to really enjoy pumpkin pie over the years. I think pumpkin pie is very good. But yeah, that would probably be that, or like a good cookie would be something I'd like.
I haven't come around on the pumpkin stuff yet. Like I've tried it, I've given it a shot. It's just not for me.
Not even like pumpkin spice.
I think pumpkin spice is way too overhyped.
I don't know about that. I've even come around to having. I had a pumpkin like ale IPA recently at one of the crafts here in Columbia. Man, it's like give me pumpkin anything right now, and I'll probably enjoy it.
Well, I'm not quite there yet. You mentioned your family's eating at 1 tomorrow. Do you have an ideal like time that you prefer to eat on Thanksgiving? Because you said that one's a little early for you.
Yeah, we're eating at 2. That's probably normal. That's always been the case, like mid-afternoon.
Okay.
I don't agree with eating like I don't think it's really a wrong time, but like I don't think you eat it that late at night. You know, like 8 or 9 o'clock. That feels
that's too much.
Late.
That's too close
Like,
to bedtime.
Thanksgiving is it's a meal and a holiday, but it's also like the meal should probably take place during the afternoon.
Well,
that's always the way I've grown accustomed to it.
And the ideal way is you eat mid-afternoon, and then everything kind of gets left out. So then later on, when you're watching a game, like, you know what? Maybe I will have another piece of pie. Maybe I will have a turkey sandwich at 8 o'clock, and boom, it's there and ready to go.
Exactly. That's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, so we'll have fun. I know Reynolds Plantation out there at Oconee, fun place to hang out, and we'll get locked back in for the Clemson game coming up on Friday.
Yeah, man, we'll catch up on Friday. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and I'll see you then.
All right, man. See you then. Jack Beltry out there enjoying Thanksgiving with his family. And again, we'll get him back in here in studio coming up on Friday. As he mentioned, men's basketball in action on Friday. And as we head into the break here, going into the top of the hour, I do have a couple of pairs of tickets to give away. 2 pairs of tickets to give away to see men's basketball take on the Charleston Southern Buccaneers over at Colonial Life Arena, 4 o'clock on Friday. To callers number 4 and 5 right now at 803-404-6100. Give us a call, win those tickets, and go enjoy Black Friday over at CLA. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs coming up next on your Wednesday on the game.
Everyone knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands with their guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. They're hard to beat when you need a new system. But did you know they also have great deals for repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're strapped for cash, AAA Heating and Air can help. They'll get your repairs done with payment options for up to 12 months and also no credit check required. That's right. So if you are the homeowner, all you need is a valid bank account. That's it. That's all you need. So don't wait. Call AAA Heating and Air today and get your comfort back on track. AAA Heating and Air. Comfort you can trust.
11 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on your Thanksgiving Eve as we get you set for the holiday tomorrow, where we, of course, will not be here. We'll be back in on Friday for your usual Football Friday and getting locked in for not only South Carolina and Clemson, but a full weekend of rivalry football to help further set the table for the playoff, for bowl season, all that kind of stuff. Happy Thanksgiving Eve, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Have we trained? Are we prepared for the Thanksgiving plate?
I am.
Plates
I had a bit of a dry run this past weekend. We did a little bit with some of our neighbors. So that got me warmed up. I'm loose. I'm ready to go. And, ready to tackle this thing tomorrow.
You had Friendsgiving?
Kind of,
Are you going back to Georgia?
Yeah, so as soon as the show's over today, I make the trek back home, and then I'll drive back sometime tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
So quick little turnaround.
Wes, you'll be at home. You got people coming in?
Oh, yeah, we host.
I say
That's right, yeah.
Baby's first Thanksgiving.
Once you have, yeah. Now, we were, for a while, we still traveled with the kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
But the family has consolidated into the Midlands, which is very nice. But you can definitely use I don't know, this sounds bad. I got a baby, like, you got to come to me, you know?
Yeah, we've actually been using that before we even had a baby.
Yeah, we got a baby on the way. We can't come. Yeah, you got to come to me.
Yeah.
Hey, leverage that as long as you can, man.
Yeah, might as
Nothing
well.
wrong with that. We'll get into some Thanksgiving stuff later on in the hour. I meant to ask you guys if we could get Alyssa Lang on so we could grill her about her takes on turkey, because she's very anti-turkey, apparently.
Yeah, I have thoughts.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to some of those to wrap up the hour. Of course, we're getting set for South Carolina and Clemson coming up on Saturday, noon kick, pregame coverage starting at 7 a.m., very cold 7 a.m. for myself and Terry Ford doing Gamecocks game day, by the way. But it'll wrap up the season. And like we kind of knew this already, but yesterday, Jordan Kay of the State newspaper did confirm via Jeremiah Donati, Coach Beamer will be back for 2026. Again, it's not been the season anybody wanted, but I think we all felt pretty safe saying that he's going to get another year. That confirms it yesterday. And you go into this weekend knowing no matter what happens, Coach Beamer will be back next season.
Yeah, I think, to your point, we kind of thought it was heading this way. And, I mean, here's the thing about college football in 2025 and, just this era. Like, you're safe until you're not. So I do think it was newsworthy. It was worthwhile to get that confirmed on the record by Jordan. And, you've had every reaction you could imagine, from excitement to disappointment to people saying, well, that's not news. I mean, it is news.
Yeah.
It definitely is news, even if it's just to confirm what we thought was going to happen. And, I think my anticipation was, maybe they do something like this after the Clemson game, but obviously Donati wanted to go ahead and get ahead of it. And also, you got to remember, signing day is next Wednesday.
Yes.
So this is a time when schools are going to be making their final pushes for your guys that have been committed. They're going to be making their final financial offers to your guys that are committed. And honestly, this is when people pull out all the stops. They throw crazy things out there. They get very, very negative. And so I think certainly you're going to have other schools say, well, Beamer's not even going to be there. So I think this was smart to go ahead and just get it out there, confirm it. You kind of stop a good bit of the speculation that people may have. Even if Beamer was always safe, you were always going to have people speculating about it because the way this season has gone. So, yeah, I think it's smart to go ahead and just get it out there.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of reverse engineer, like why are things the way that they are? Why was this like even a conversation? Obviously, you had the way that this season went, which was not up to what anybody hoped for, or frankly what anybody expected. Even if your expectations were not, guys, what was South Carolina in some of the preseason polls? 13, 11.
I looked it up
15.
earlier. They had the 15th best odds to win the national championship this year.
And even if you think, like I did, that was shooting a little bit too high, you didn't expect this.
Yep.
Where things are right now with 4 wins, missing out on a bowl game. And so that's why this has even been a conversation. But if you kind of look at, well, why did South Carolina make this decision or kind of finalize this decision, I'd go back to what you said, Wes. But plus, if you're looking at, the reasons to bring back a coach, honestly, I don't even go to the whole Who are you going to get? You know, that's another argument, Wes, people have been having on social media. I don't go to, hey, it's a really crowded coaching carousel. Like, that is true. I think what South Carolina landed on is, hey, Shane Beamer almost just had his team in the playoff last year. No, almost doesn't count, but it was a really good season.
Yeah.
He orchestrated a turnaround after the 5-win campaign in 2023, had his team turned around that year in 2024 to have a really, really good season, earned a new contract that was just signed at the end of January.
Yep.
And so the feeling is he's built up enough cachet from his first several years. Has it been perfect? No. Have there been 2 losing seasons? Yes. But there's also been, it seems like South Carolina thinks, enough good in there, enough signs that he can get it turned around to give him another year to bring it back. And, of course, as we all know, it is going to be an important year next year.
And I think there's a distinct difference when you compare it to other programs around the country and the decisions that they've made at head coach, or other programs have said, hey, we're going to hang on to this guy for another year. We talked about Florida State the other day, retaining Mike Norvell for 2026, even though these past 2 years have been a disaster. There's a difference between, hey, things aren't going good right now, and knowing definitively this is the wrong guy to lead your program going forward, and it's not going to get better. Now, again, if we're having the same conversation a year from now, then yeah, we can have a little bit more of an idea of, okay, this just isn't going in the right direction. Then maybe you make a move. But last year, and I know people are sick of hearing about last year, that was enough to be able to say, all right, he's proven he can do it. You got to give him an opportunity to try and do it again. If he doesn't, okay, then you can make a move. But we can't just completely forget that last year existed.
Yeah, and it was literally just last year. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I think, here's the thing. When a situation just gets completely untenable, and, you know, you feel like if the players have quit, you feel like the recruiting has fallen off, you feel like there's no talent on the roster. If it gets to that point, then that's when you have to obviously look in the mirror and kind of take your medicine and make a move. And here's the thing, man. Hiring a new coach, people get excited about it, but it's an absolute crapshoot. And that's when it's not a crazy coaching cycle and coaching carousel. That's on a normal offseason. So add in the fact that, stack it on top of the fact this is the craziest carousel we've seen in years. And, yeah, it gets people excited. But here's where I disagree. You don't care about winning. Mm. Well, what if the chances of winning next year, just percentage-wise, there are no guarantees. And no way am I trying to say I can see the future that anybody nobody knows. Nobody knows. But the chances actually are greater of you winning next year with Shane Beamer at the helm and a new OC at the helm. Far greater, I would say, than some magical head coach that's going to come in and just fix it after you blow the whole thing up. Because we're not in the era anymore where I bring in a new coach and he just gets to coach the guys that were already here on the roster, just gets to retain a bunch of guys. Nah, man. You think the roster has some holes now? Let's see what happens when you fire the coach. Now, yes, if you go a certain amount of time and you're not winning enough, everybody knows this. You have to make a move, but just because you don't make a move does not mean you don't care about winning. Maybe waiting another year gives you the best chance to win. And to Tyler's point, here's my thing. To me, there's a huge difference between, well, you were really good last year, incredibly disappointing season this year. Nobody is disagreeing with that. Okay. What if you have another incredibly disappointing season next year? Yes, now you have 2 straight incredibly disappointing seasons. That is a completely, entirely different thing than having one incredibly disappointing season after a season where you sort of beat all expectations. So what if you turn it around and it leans much more in line of what we saw last year? Mm. Then you're going, okay, we've now, the number, it is kind of, not to give Dabo Swinney a ton of credit on this radio station, but the numbers you can kind of skew them however you want to present them, right? And Dabo was asked about, what about the fact South Carolina's beat you 2 out of 3? And Dabo says, well, it's also 2 out of 4, or we've won 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like, however you want to. So, yeah, you can be like, oh, South Carolina has not hit expectations 2 out of the last 3 seasons. Or you can be like, well, Beamer has exceeded expectations 3 out of the 5 seasons. So if you just were looking at things last year, the numbers were trending. Remember, everybody was comparing Beamer's win total through 4 years to Steve Spurrier. Mm-hmm. Now you tack a disappointing season onto it, and everybody's comparing them to Will Muschamp. So, it can shift to the negative very quickly. It can shift to the positive very, very quickly. I disagree. I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of you've seen enough to give him a shot to fix this thing for next year. And I partially say that, too, because the upside of doing so is too high not to give it a shot. Because what if he does pull it off? Now you have a guy that you're not going to be constantly worrying about other people coming in and just stealing from you. You have a guy that handles things the right way, builds a culture where guys want to stay, has done a really lot of good. But, yes, the offense has not been what it needs to be during his time here. Yep. That is the single biggest thing that I believe has held the program back. What if he pulls that off? What if he fixes it? Then we already saw a glimpse of that last season. So, yeah, I would run it back as well. And, let's see what happens next year. Let's see what happens with a full offseason dedicated to trying to fix the negatives from this year.
Well, of course, this weekend's a big game, regardless of if you're being retained or being moved on from, as everybody focuses in on the Palmetto Bowl. We'll take a look back at last year's game and the magic that was at the very end, where Lenore Sellers cemented himself in Gamecock history with his late touchdown run. Before we do, though, this weekend's the last game of the season. It's also the final home game, which means we have another Firehouse Subs tailgating platter to give away to caller number 5 right now at 803-404-6100. Give us a call and win yourself that tailgate platter, courtesy of our friends over at Firehouse Subs. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday here on The Game.
Three wide receivers over to the left side. Harbor over to the right. Sellers in the pocket. Up in the pocket, gonna run inside the 20, 10. Lenore Sellers going left side, 5. Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown. Touchdown, Lenore Sellers from 20 yards out. The Gamecocks take the lead at Death Valley.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. We typically rewind on Thursday, but moving it up a day because of the Thanksgiving holiday tomorrow. And always excited to talk about what went down at Memorial Stadium last year, perhaps the biggest game in the history of the South Carolina Clemson rivalry, considering what was at stake for both teams going into that one, and Lenore Sellers having his greatest moment as a Gamecock up to this point, leading the team down the field 75 yards, capping it off with that touchdown run that gave Carolina the lead. Of course, Demetrius Knight would get the game-sealing interception off Cade Klubnik following that after Clemson had drove down the field a good ways and cementing one of the best wins in rivalry and maybe program history.
Yeah, the only disappointing thing about that game is that it didn't end up mattering at all in the college football playoff picture, which was obviously
but at the moment, at the time,
obviously very disappointing to a lot of people. And here's my thing about that game that stands out to me is, can you get back that version of Lenore Sellers, like that guy who, I mean, I was watching the game actually with Chris, and the entire fourth quarter. So it just felt like this game is on Sellers' back, and it kind of felt like he's not going to be denied. And he carried himself with a mindset that I'm not going to be denied, even though, you know, you had the drive where you had the interception where it looked like South Carolina was going down to tie it up, and you throw the pick where he was looking for Harbor on the sideline, and it gets picked. Then you drive back down in the Clemson territory again. You get stopped. You're about to go for it. I think there was a false start or delay a game, I think. And so you go, oh, you got to kick it. So you kick it, and you're going, well, they now put themselves in position to win it, but are they even going to get the ball back? Defense gets a stop for you. You get the ball back, and then you're going, all right, now or never. And Sellers goes down and just does what he does, and Clemson just absolutely could not tackle the kid. And I think when you play like that, this is something that's been pointed out to me. You do not have to be the most vocal, outward leader in the world when you play with that level just of production, but also of confidence. And people are going to ride with you when you're having a game like that. And so we just have not quite seen that version. I actually, funny enough, I thought we saw some glimpses last week. And I think that's a big thing that Mike Ferry and the staff in charge right now on offense have been just trying to implement and trying to just push, is getting Sellers' confidence back. So that's what stood out to me most about that game last year is, hey, this guy is making his iconic moment before our very eyes. And there's been some iconic moments for South Carolina in that stadium. And, man, they can change the conversation going into this offseason in a major way with a win on Saturday.
Yeah, and you remember that, you know, that last offensive drive for South Carolina too. You know, they moved the ball. You have the the pass to Delvon Campbell, beautiful ball. What do y'all think? Catch, no catch?
I thought at the time it was. Now,
I initially did.
It was ruled incomplete on the field, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and it's, again, one of those things when it's so close, it's usually going to end up being upheld is the language we're using now. And I really thought we were going to have to talk about that on Monday. Like, oh, my God, if they got that call right, then Carolina wins the game or whatever, and obviously ended up being nullified a couple minutes later. But, yeah, big moment there on what could have been maybe the game-winning touchdown.
Then you lose a yard. Then you're getting in a third long situation. You get a false start. And now it's 3rd and 16, and the stadium's absolutely keyed up. They did a smart thing, I think, because they played man coverage, which maybe that part wasn't smart. But they had a spy on. Didn't matter. Sellers stepped up. The offensive line, did their job. But Sellers just stepped up and made, basically the entire defense miss. I mean, it's one of the best plays, you ever see. I mean, iconic is absolutely, the right word for it. And, he had so many of those plays during the game. I mean, it was just a wild game overall. But you go back and look at Sellers, totals. He had, what was he officially credited with? I think 166 on the ground.
Yep.
He averaged 11 yards a carry. Obviously had 2 touchdowns. He had 190 yards after contact. So he had more yards after contact than he ended up getting. He forced 15 missed tackles. He had 7 runs of 10 yards or more. Had 114 yards on scrambles. I mean, it's just it's one of the best performances. See, and Dabo got asked about it, I think this week. It's like, hey, first of all, what can y'all do to not let that happen again? And secondly, did you fire your defensive coordinator because of that? And he said it didn't weigh into it much. He said Wes Goodwin, their former DC who got let go after that game, it's like they were there. They just couldn't tackle him. Wes can't tackle him for him, which is a good point. And
my brain jumps every time because I think Beamer said something about Wes at some point, and then Dabo kept saying Wes. Sorry, every time I just hear my name, my brain's like, what?
Yeah, huh? What?
Sorry, continue.
You called me? Yeah. No, that was it. I mean, and so, look, you can't bank on that type of performance, but to your point, Wes Mitchell, about Sellers' confidence, like we have seen the last couple weeks, it was kind of a tale of two halves at A&M, right? But in that first half and then throughout the Coastal game, you see more of that. Looks like the Norris Sellers, and we've seen like patches of that this season. And I do think this staff has done, the reconfigured offensive staff is doing a better job of building that confidence. And basically, you need that version of Sellers. Doesn't have to run for 166 and 2 touchdowns. It'd be great if that happens. But you need him to have that mentality of I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what he looked like last year.
And again, these two teams are comparable record-wise, and we'll get into some specifics of Clemson's roster coming up here in a second. But I feel like, and I already submitted my stat pick, which you guys need to get yours in case you didn't see Jack's text message earlier.
Working on that. I saw it. I ignored it.
But I feel like this is going to be a game that's going to come down to the wire. I don't think either team runs away with this. It's going to be a 4-quarter fight, and it really could be one of those, hey, last team with possession of the football ends up winning. It's like, okay, if you put yourself in a similar situation, can we see that same Sellers from last year? And once again, give credit where it's due, because right after that, Cade Klubnik was driving Clemson down the field. Carolina just made a really good defensive play because Stewart got pressure on him, and that kind of forced the throw to be a little bit short, and it landed in Demetrius Knight's arms, and obviously the rest was history there. But, can you make plays, not just Sellers, but everybody on this team, can you make plays when it counts in a critical game late? Because, again, closing out games has been the biggest struggle for this team this year.
Yeah, it has, and there's obviously going to be some pressure, right? There's going to be some pressure to go execute and do what we're talking about. So I think for South Carolina moving forward, this is a situation where, this game almost, weirdly enough, may come down more to who can avoid bad things than it does like, yeah, you have to go make plays. But what we've seen South Carolina, we've certainly seen Clemson. I mean, I keep going back to the end of that Louisville game where it just seemed like both teams are trying to hand it to the other, right? And Clemson has just shot themselves in the foot way too many times this year, I think, and that's been a huge reason that their season has been so disappointing. So here's the thing. Tyler, you say it's going to be a close football game.
I do.
Is it going to be a pretty football game? Because I think there's some evidence that it might not be. So if you get into one of those games, a lot of times it's really, and again, this is not the exciting way to say it, but who can not mess up? You know what I'm saying? Like who can just not have the silly things happen? I mean, look at all the pre-snap stuff we talked about for South Carolina that just plagued them throughout the first half of the year. Look at all the just kind of silly, like, ball protection issues that Clemson has had at times. Who can not have a pass be backwards and be recovered by the opponent and ran in while everyone watches?
Yeah, that line's going to be really thin, and we could very well come in here Monday talking about pre-snap penalties, talking about missing wide open guys, those kind of things that have been the frustrating part of the season overall. Because again, I expect this to be a close, probably weird game. I do have a little bit of a funky score for one of these teams. I can't tell you how they get there. Maybe I'll know that by Friday. But, yeah, this could be one of those just weird, around 500-ish, two teams, both kind of with similar records, not playing for what they thought they're going to be playing for, and just a wild rivalry Saturday.
Who you got winning?
Well, that's for Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know.
I think most people probably can guess. But we'll talk about that on Friday. We'll take more of a look at this Clemson roster coming up next as we get you set for South Carolina and Clemson coming up on Saturday as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along here on the game.
All right, everybody, let's let you know about one of our great partners here on the game. It's our friends over at Integrated Media. They can take care of anything that you may need at your home or your business from an audio, visual, or a tech standpoint. They are your true one-stop shop for any of your tech needs. If you're looking at doing something as simple as mounting a television, to security and cameras, to complete smart home systems, making sure your Wi-Fi is up and running, they can take care of all of it for you. You don't have to go to big box stores or scour the millions of options online. They can source the equipment for you. They can recommend what the best equipment is in 2025 and beyond, and then they can professionally install it at your home. If you want to see some examples of their past work, check them out on social media. Integrated Media Columbia on Instagram and on Facebook. They've been to my home. They've been to West Mitchell's home. They can come out and take care of any of your tech needs. 803-948-8327, Integrated Media.
offensively. Starts with Cade Klubnik, the quarterback. It's been cool following his career and seeing how he's just gotten better each and every season. And I know the season didn't start this year the way they wanted or he wanted, but he's just continued to hang in there and get better. He's very hot right now. Adam Randall at running back's been a great change from a depth standpoint for them. He's a load. The offensive line, I know they've had some injuries, but physical, well coached. The 2 tackles have been there forever. A lot of respect for them and the way they play and their durability in their receiving core is dangerous. They've got size, they've got quickness, they've got athleticism. Tight end room has depth, so they're an offense that can score a lot of points and is really dangerous.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Ty West, Chris with you. Of course, that's Coach Beamer talking yesterday in his usual Tuesday presser about some of the names to know for this upcoming weekend's matchup against Clemson. And we had a text earlier on this morning, and somebody asked the question of, well, why was Clemson so hyped up when it came to net being a national championship pick and all that kind of stuff? And you looked at their roster and what they had returning, and it was a lot of those names. Again, guys like Peter Woods that aren't going to have to wait long to hear their name called in the first round of the NFL draft. We thought Klubnik was going to be potentially a first-round quarterback. You had that receiving core, as Coach Beamer talked about there, and there was the expectation that, and yeah, last year wasn't the greatest Clemson team we've ever seen, but they made the playoff, won the ACC championship, and you expected development and all those guys to improve, come back for another year, something to be said for continuity as well. And going back to our conversation yesterday with Paul Strelo of Tiger Illustrated, that's where so much frustration is coming from because the expectations were so high. This was a year where you're supposed to put yourself back in that playoff mix, despite having all this talent that, again, a lot of these guys are still going to play at the next level and hear their names called coming up in the springtime at the NFL draft. The results on the field aren't matching it.
Yeah, and shameless plug, you can read on Gamecock Central. Chris, you're working on this very thing right now, right? We've got
out.
Star Power, where it compares the two. And, I mean, ironically, I believe a lot of us were talking about Clemson and Penn State as being the 2 programs that did this phenomenal job of just retaining their talent. And we were saying, hey, this is how you do it in this era. You keep the guys that have been there and you build with the actual foundation, and it's going to set you up for success. And, I mean, you would argue probably is that the 2 most disappointing seasons in the entire country?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Certainly 2 of them, and an argument that it is the 2 most disappointing seasons. You have, I mean, just to give you context, one of the guys got fired after going to the college football playoff last year, and the other, who has brought Clemson unprecedented success, actually has had a disappointing enough season that there is a small faction of Clemson fans that is like, time to move on, which is absolute insanity, I think. But, yeah, it's been a situation where if you looked on paper, it's still a very talented roster.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about a place that has built, like, they've tried to build this thing on locker room and culture and togetherness, and we do things differently here. That was, on paper, when Clemson was winning those national championships, they had generational talent at quarterback. They had some just stacked defensive lines. They had some elite wide receivers. I don't know if you would quite say, looking back, they recruited on paper to the level that like an Alabama was at the time. So, they've kind of done it their own way for a long time. This just, no question, on paper was and still is a loaded roster, but the on-field product, I mean, they've gotten beaten by several teams that had way less on paper talent than them.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, it's really strange. I mean, it like you knew that going throughout the season. You're like, man, the results don't really match the talent, the expectation, and that's why people are so frustrated. There's always an element of, like, if you go into a season and you expect, like, we might not be all that great this year. Like, you're still mad, obviously, but when the expectation is we're going to take what we did last year and be markedly better because we're getting everybody back and we're adding some pieces, and then you get this, that's why people are so frustrated. It has you questioning everything. I mean, Clemson has five stars in their starting lineup, and they got a bunch of guys that were very, very close, And it's hard, we asked Strelo yesterday, what is it? And the answer is kind of just, well, how long do you have? Because it's hard, when you got this many problems, when it goes this way, we say this in Columbia as it pertains to South Carolina's program, you can't just point to one specific thing, Yeah. They've got experience on the offensive line and talent. Yeah, they've had some injuries, but that group's been disappointing. They've had their talent back on the defensive line and even have had a couple guys emerge. They haven't been as good. It's interesting that Will Helt has probably been the best player on their team as a transfer. And then on the other side, a lot of people are clamoring for another transfer, the other guy they took at receiver who came from Southeast Missouri State, I think, to play more, And can't even remember the guy's name. But it's just been it's hard to put your finger on exactly why it's happened this way. Probably a lot of reasons for it. But the point is, like, if you're looking at this Clemson team as a fan and you're trying to think about how this game may go, the results are what they are. So this seems like probably a more winnable game than it did at the beginning of the year, and percentage-wise.
And as we have from our conversation with Strelo yesterday, he reminded us that Brian Wesco is not going to be playing. You're going to be without Jaheim Lawson. Braden Jacobs, one of their offensive linemen, is going to be out. So you're down a couple of key pieces that are significant contributors to this team. So the version of this team you're still not getting at its absolute best with those guys being out.
And Olsen Pat Henry at tight end, who's a starter for them and has made a lot of plays. He's a threat downfield. The point is, like, both these teams have struggled, right, and aren't have some similar themes. They haven't been able to get out of their own way at times. Still, a Clemson team has got a lot of talent. And Shane Beamer pointed out, I think he's right on this, they are playing better than they were, particularly on offense. I think they're playing a little better defensively. They had a couple games where they just had the SMU and Duke games. You're looking at that thing going, this is just bust after bust after bust. It looks better. And South Carolina looks better the past couple weeks. So, fascinating game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, that's why you play the game at the end of the day. And Clemson does still have an opportunity to get to 7 wins, possibly improve their, bowl status as of right now. I think they're projected for like the Sun Bowl or something along those lines. So, they still got a little bit more to play for after the season's over. But again, this is the end of it for South Carolina. After Saturday when the Classic Zero, you're into the offseason. We're talking about OC hire, recruiting, transfer portal, and all that kind of stuff. So your last chance to make an impact and potentially, maybe, hopefully, win 3 out of the last 4 against Clemson and send the group of DQ Smith and guys like that out with a really good record against the team in the upstate.
Well, when Beamer took over and you looked at where South Carolina was as a program, you looked at where Clemson was as a program, the fact we're even talking about that being a possibility is something nobody would have thought. Like, I distinctly remember having the conversation with South Carolina fans, is this Clemson thing ever going to end? Like, because it just felt like they were so set up for success. And, and then they go out and they hire, and Garrett Riley, one of what was considered like a top 10 offensive coordinator. And, hey, they find ways to fix this thing. And it just has not happened. It has not played out like that. So, yeah, I think, man, I know the season has not been what South Carolina fans wanted, obviously, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to be disappointed is what I'm trying to say. But, man, it would feel a lot different with a W on Saturday.
We'll give our final thoughts on that, obviously, coming up on Friday, play by or sell, give predictions and all those kind of things. We'll come back and wrap up the hour, talk a little bit of Thanksgiving. What did Mike Leach like to put on his Thanksgiving plate back in the day? We'll talk about that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Howard West Chris wrapping up the hour here on your Thanksgiving Eve. Women's basketball in action today and tomorrow. They'll take on Duke this afternoon out in Las Vegas for the Players Era Championship. Tip-off at 4:30. Pregame coverage starting at 4 right here on the game. Then tomorrow, based on the results of today, they'll either be playing at 8 or 10:30 p.m. here locally against Texas or UCLA. Again, that'll be coming up tomorrow on your Thanksgiving night. It's my favorite holiday of the entire year because all I got to do is eat and watch football. And with any holiday, it was always interesting to hear the one and only Mike Leach's thoughts on how he went about it. So here's the legendary coach describing his Thanksgiving plate.
A lot of people are going to be watching that game on Thanksgiving. So if you were celebrating Thanksgiving and making your plate, what are you putting on it?
Oh, I always make the gravy, and I do make great gravy. I'm not a big cook guy, and haven't been, but I've made the gravy for decades. I always, I always get white meat, a little stuffing, not too much, lots of mashed potatoes, gravy over everything. Hopefully they have greens. They generally don't. And then corn or green beans, never sweet potatoes.
Ask if he likes cranberry
fruit
sauce.
pies better than any of this pumpkin apple stuff, you know.
Are you a cranberry sauce fan?
Yeah, but
all right.
just a quick little droplet of it. I'm not going to get carried away with that either.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the win.
The one and only Mike Leach. How do we rate that plate that he broke down there?
Oh, man. Great questions, Alyssa, let me say. And
that one actually wasn't Alyssa. That was
not
somebody
Alyssa?
else.
Who was that?
I didn't recognize her. It was somebody else that worked for the SEC
God,
Network.
it sounded like Alyssa.
It did sound like a lot like her. That wasn't her.
She's had some good interviews with him. Wow. Pretty good plate.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I want sweet potatoes on my plate, though.
Okay.
They're not like the highlight.
Where's the sweet potato hate there? That was kind of...
I've come around on sweet potatoes as I've gotten older. I wasn't into it as a kid, but now I'm like, okay, yeah.
As a kid, it's like the most vile thing you can think of, and then you're like, oh, this is.
There's a lot of ways you can frame up the old sweet potatoes, though. Like sometimes, maybe it doesn't have much flavor. Sometimes it tastes like dessert, which is what we roll with. Like these are some sweet potatoes.
Casserole with you got brown sugar, maybe some marshmallow,
some
maybe
pecans
on it.
At that point, it's not a vegetable anymore.
No,
correct. Yeah.
But it's good.
It is.
Pretty good plate.
I upset the live chat earlier with my stance on dressing versus stuffing because he said stuffing.
Tyler, okay, go ahead.
Well, what were you gonna say?
I'm just hoping you're gonna say it's dressing.
It is dressing.
Okay. Well, how'd you? They're upset about that?
Yeah, apparently.
I thought it was dressing in the South.
It's supposed to be, but everybody on the live chat's jumping on me for saying that. And I have a distinction because the common rebuttal is, dressing is what you put on a salad. Yes, dressing with a G is. To me, you don't put the G on what you eat on Thanksgiving. It is dressing. There's a difference.
Well,
There's a distinction.
Also, guys, words have different meanings.
They do.
So that's a fact.
But that's my easy pushback when people say that. I'm like, well, it's spelled differently.
Also, dressing and stuffing can be different things. Like,
they can be.
Technically, stuffing is stuffed in the turkey and cooked that way.
It's supposed to be.
Dressing is like you take cornbread and then you mash it all up and pour some stuff on it and then you bake it in the oven.
Yeah. Do your families have like a specific dressing recipe that's like passed down from generations?
Passed down from my grandma. My aunt still cooks it. It's phenomenal.
And it's not like written. It's just like a handful of this, a pinch of that type of stuff. You got to use your heart when you come to measuring.
My Aunt Judy took over the role when my grandma passed.
That's a high honor.
Yes. Every Thanksgiving she brings it. And
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
That's the point of the holiday.
Dressing is like my actual favorite part of the
Oh, it is? That's your number one?
Yes.
Oh, listen, I eat it like cake. I mean,
I like it. It's not my top. My top is like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I do love turkey. My mom's mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese is always good.
I'm going to eat a metric ton of that tomorrow. It's going to be fantastic.
Well, it's a good thing we don't have to do a show tomorrow because we'll be asleep doing it.
Yeah. Especially the time we do the show.
Right. So I'm sleeping. I asked Jack earlier, is there an ideal time to eat on Thanksgiving? Because you can do like you do early, you can do late, you can do kind of in the middle of the day. But like I think we all like it's one meal, right? There's not like unless you're going to multiple places.
I've done two. I've done two
you
before.
can do two in the day. Like all right, this side of the family, that side of the family. But like in one location, it's one meal per location.
Yeah, one per location.
Yes,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I like to do so. That feeling when you lay down on the couch, you got the NFL game on, and you're just like, why did I do that to myself? And you're like, I'm not here. This is every single year. I'm not even going to eat anything for dinner. I'm done eating for the day.
Yep.
Then about 6 o'clock rolls along. I do have leftovers in the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
Make the exact same plate from earlier.
That's right.
And go in again, and then hate myself after that.
So you make the second plate. You don't do the post-meal turkey sandwich?
That's a Friday thing.
That's the next
that's
day.
a Black Friday thing when you just put everything on bread and covered in gravy.
I have been known to do the turkey sandwich same day, though.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to hold that against you.
And that, you know, people have, just like other Thanksgiving-related things, they've got the very strong feelings on like what goes on the sandwich and the turkey sandwich and all that. I'm good. White bread, turkey, mayo, salt and pepper.
Fair.
That's all I need. I don't need. I'm not putting cranberry on it.
I was going to ask.
Not on the sandwich.
Are you anti-cranberry?
I love the cranberry on the Firehouse subs.
Yes.
And I'm not like totally opposed to the cranberry, but if I'm just making it, I don't put the cranberry on it.
All right, guys.
I know Wes has the cranberry.
No,
cake.
take a little cup, put some mayo in there, put the cranberry in the mayo, just give it a little stir. Spread that on your sandwich.
Cranberry mayo spread.
Okay.
It will change your life.
All
It will
right.
change your life.
All right.
Trust me. And actually throw a little bit of pepper on the sandwich too.
See, I'm
You
with,
have to have salt and pepper.
I'm with Chris. I usually don't eat cranberries, but when it on the Firehouse subs Thanksgiving sub, it completes it. It's perfect.
Try it the
it's
way
toast.
I'm telling you to, Tyler.
Okay.
Trust me.
All right. I'll give
Trust
that a
me.
shot.
Cranberry mayo aioli from West Mitchell.
No,
I
just
don't even know if that
Duke's,
counts.
Duke's mayo.
I say, what, aioli is just a fancy way to say mayonnaise, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I like aioli. All I know is anytime I eat something that somebody says is aioli, I'm like, that's really good.
I think when you put something in the mayonnaise, it becomes aioli, like garlic or whatever. So, yeah, cranberry aioli mayonnaise, courtesy of Chef Wes.
I don't know why, but pumpkin pie is trending on Twitter right now. So, are y'all pumpkin pie believers or no?
I can't come around on pumpkin. I'm not there yet.
I'm okay with it. I'd much rather have pecan pie with ice cream.
I'm right there with you.
I like the pecan pie that has chocolate chips in it, so it's kind of like a Toll House pie type
Also
thing.
very
but
good.
Pecans on top.
Never mad at pecans or chocolate chips. So we'll talk about how Thanksgiving week coming up on Friday, give our final thoughts of South Carolina and Clemson as well, and look ahead to what's going to be a fun weekend. We're going to have games on Friday. The Egg Bowl's on Friday. Where's Lane going to go? We'll discuss that as well. Halftime show coming up next with myself and Bill Gunner as your Thanksgiving Eve Wednesday rolls along here on The Game.